First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to present our paper at the 8th International Conference on Development and Investment in Infrastructure, DII 2022, under the theme Building Smart, Resilient and Sustainable Infrastructure in Developing Countries. My name is Sydney Mudenda. Co-authors include Dr. Ian Banda, Dr. James Tembo, and Mr. Kelvin Lungu, all from the University of Zambia. The title of our paper is Disaster Management Adaptation for Peri-Urban Areas, a Case of Zambia. The outline of our presentation is as shown on the screen. First, we'll have introduction, methodology, results and discussions, conclusion, and the references. Introduction. Flooding is a pressing climate change concern in most years across the world. In Zambia, particularly during the rainy season, water sanitation and hygiene are a public health problem, according to Nyambe et al. 2020, Nyambe and Mauchi 2021. Low-income and planned settlements such as peri-urban areas with poor drainage infrastructures are vulnerable to the effects of flooding and are exposed to risks of water-related disease outbreaks. Flooding disasters and public health issues vis-a-vis water, sanitation and hygiene must be addressed in a way that is consistent with the flood disaster management governance because of the consequences that flooding disasters have on public health. According to Qatar 2008, Gupta et al. 2016, and Islam et al. 2016, disaster management must focus on prevention, preparedness, and response in order to reduce or eliminate potential losses from hazard, and should offer prompt and appropriate help to survivors of disasters and ensure a speedy and successful recovery. There is need to adopt disaster management implementation mechanisms with adaptive techniques addressing peri-urban concerns in order to reduce the risk of public health-related flooding disasters. Methodology. Kanyama peri-urban area in Lusaka, Zambia was taken as a case study area because it is prone to flood disasters and a hotspot for disease outbreaks. The authors used the grounded theory methodology approach in this study, specifically the Straussian grounded theory approach. The approach advocates for prior theoretical knowledge in order to have some acquaintance with the subject of interest. Purposive and snowball sampling strategies were used to select respondents. Semi-structured interviews were employed as a mode of inquiry for qualitative data collection. The figure shown on the screen is adapted from Volstead and Razat 2019, depicting basically the Straussian grounded theory methodology. After the back and forth literature review and qualitative data collection, the authors carried out an open coding analysis. Pieces of data that summarize abstract ideas based on analytical findings were given tentative labels or conceptual features by the authors after reading through the data repeatedly. After carefully analyzing these pre-existing conceptual elements, the authors developed inferred cluster labels for linked conceptual elements, which is referred to as axial coding. Emergent equations were assigned to these cluster labels. Further, the observed occurrences from these results were characterized using the recognized emergent concerns and their associated conceptual characteristics. Results and discussion. The National Disaster Management Policy of 2015 governs the use of resources pre-disaster, during disaster, and post-disaster phases. It explicitly states the procedures to follow concerning disasters that include drought, floods, epidemics, and pests, which are the common disasters in Zambia. It acknowledges the need for water and sanitation services during a disaster, but merely mentions the need for these services to be delivered and not how they should be delivered. The outlined procedures for the various disasters are generalized and not specific to a type of settlement, according to Mudenda et al. 2022b. The shortcomings in institutional disaster and public health management that are peculiar to peri-urban settings under flooding disaster management have been identified as a defining feature of these emerging challenges. These emergent issues are inherent to the predominance of pit latrines and problems associated with peri-urban areas classified as informal settlements and are categorized in this study to include sanitation facilities, service delivery, informal settlement problems, societal attitudes and behavior, responsiveness of authority, and community and stakeholder engagement. The figure shown on the screen illustrates the emergent issues and associated conceptual aspects. On the far right, depending on where you are looking at this figure from, we have emergent issue categories, which have basically been alluded to in the previous slide. And on the far left, we have the conceptual aspects. Here in the conceptual aspects, we have summarized abstract ideas based on analytical findings that were given tentative conceptual features by the authors after reading through the data repeatedly. Existing occurrences were noticeable from the emergent issue categories and their conceptual aspects, which in turn made it possible to develop observable phenomena. In conclusion, 4 key phenomena were established from the emergent issues that need to be enhanced in order to improve disaster management with adaptive robustness for peri-urban areas. These include cultural behavior of public institutions towards flood disasters in peri-urban areas, viability of flood disaster management being non-specific to peri-urban areas, the effect of interdependencies among public institutions in flood disaster management governance, and the necessity of community participation as part of flood disaster management governance. Further, these observable phenomena will help explain consequential paradigms that provide a premise for decision makers, policy makers, and planning authority to structure adaptive implementation strategies to address peri-urban concerns with regards to flooding disasters and public health. This slide shows some of the references that were used in the study. Thank you for your attention.